if you don't have a compliance officer designated in your dealership, I think that's 101. You really have to, start with every place you're entering, taking down consumer information, your service lane, right? Certainly CRMs, DMSs. Identify the programs, then identify how you're handling them today, and then ensure that they're compliant, but you have to audit and report on it.
Welcome to the 700 Credit Podcast, the future of automotive finance, compliance, identity verification, and smarter dealership processes. Let's get into it.
Hey, what's going on, Automotive Nation? I'm Jason Harrison. Thank you for joining me on another episode of the 700 Credit Podcast. I get to talk to, well, anything and everything that has to do with credit and the things that you at a dealership, strategies and processes that you guys need to be aware of to just better your revenue and the gross margins you guys are dealing with today. Look, the 700 Credit Podcast is really your front row seat to the conversations that are shaping the automotive industry, from finance to compliance and identity verification. Hosted, of course, by me, and I have the one, the only Ken Hill with me today. All right. Each episode is going to dive into real world dealership challenges, from fraud prevention to soft pull strategies to compliant pitfalls and digital retail integrations. Whether you're an F&I office, running a BDC, or leading the dealership, this podcast gives you the insights, stories, and tools to protect your dealership and improve your bottom line. So, guys, if you're ready, grab your popcorn, get your notebook. All right. And we're going ahead and get started. Hey, Ken, how are you doing today? What's up, man? How's it going?
Good, except I feel like I have to go get my popcorn. I love popcorn.
You know what? That should be something we should do. We should have some like 700 credit, like branded popcorn bins, and we can just send it to everybody with the podcast on it saying, like, get your popcorn, get ready for an episode, right?
You can tell your marketing. That's a good idea.
Right. Hey, Ken, it's a new month, man. How you doing? How you seen in the auto industry? What are you seeing these days?
The year started off a little slow, but uptick, and we're back at previous year's levels and higher in terms of transaction volumes. A lot of dealer movement and evaluating their processes, trying to improve on their processes, understanding their weak points. Yeah.
And it's the right time. It's the right time of the year to be doing that. I mean, look, guys, I don't know where you are in the country now when you're listening to this show. Fortunately for me, it's that white stuff that's on the ground is starting to go away a little bit. I think I got a tea time book for Friday. Ken, I don't know about you, but we're getting close. We're getting very close to that selling season, and I can feel the preparation. To your point, Ken, I have heard a lot of conversations around process at the dealership, and I like that, man. That gets me jacked. I am so excited that as an industry right now, we have to get super tight. And the operators that are doing so are seeing the results, which is a perfect segue kind of into today's conversation, right? And the topic of today's conversation, guys, is one misstep that can cost your dealership thousands. Ken, we've talked about this a few times. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of missteps up there, but when I say that statement, one misstep, I'm just curious, what comes to mind for you?
A lot of things pound in my mind. Whether it's a tool they could utilize at the start of the process to give them better insight to get a customer into the right price so that they don't have to compromise the value in the car. And then there's also missteps with compliance that could cost you. Legal suits are on the rise, unfortunately. Just and tools maybe that they're not using that could really enhance their sales. Right. This is tax season, right? So
Smell it in the air.
One of the biggest couple of months of the year, consumers get their refund checks, right? And often the target of that money is a new vehicle. So
I already see it in the offers I'm seeing people are getting manufacturers getting more aggressive. We're getting ready for it. And Ken, I couldn't say it any better. You're 100% right. Right. When we think about those messed ups, dude, it's usually it's a process. Definitely compliance. Here's the funny thing, Ken, about compliance is that I don't think we realize as an industry just how much it impacts, because look, this is not something you commonly talk about at your 20 group. No one's coming in to these conferences with a shirt on saying, I got sued this month. How about you? Um,
Yeah.
like, but we know that this is going on a pretty regular basis. Look, I literally, I had three situations that compliance got my dealership into some liability issues. And to your point, Ken, it really was a breakdown in process, and the fact that I didn't have a tool there that really supported the process to make sure make sure it was being executed effectively. Here's where I want to start this off. Look, I understand that today's conversation is going to be pretty broad around compliance, but here's what I want to do. There's a lot to attack. In your opinion, Ken, all right, the most overlooked compliance mistake dealers still make. And I know you have a lot of conversation with this. You talk to a lot of dealers. Your team is working with a lot of dealers on a regular basis. What do you think is probably the most common mistake that's being happened right now?
Oh, common. I would say it's up and down the compliance food chain. They're missing steps. They don't have a good compliance program in place.
Mm.
Right. And I think most of the larger groups, over the last couple of years have had a big focus on compliance. But I don't see that trend moving down the group food chain into the mid-sized, smaller groups. It doesn't have the seriousness that it needs. There's been a lot of companies out there that focus on compliance that I think have helped
Yes.
get the message out, help educate dealers. But a lot of it, I think they're still doing on a surface level, especially around credit and compliance, right? When you access credit, you have compliance obligations. There's certain steps that you're responsible to perform, or else you're subject to fines. Also subject to class action lawsuits, right? One of the, unfortunately, the more common things we're seeing now is, um, bad actors or class action lawyers
Mm-hmm.
will send consumers into a dealership with very poor credit history, right? And make sure that dealership followed all the steps that they're supposed to do when they turn somebody down because of their credit, right? Adverse action, for instance, that's class actionable.
Yeah.
And the fines are per incident, where you should have delivered an adverse action to the consumer. So that is something that they have to be aware of, right? That dealers, I would say, another one of the more common things that I see, right? They, the government pretty much told you what they expected of dealers when they came out with the red flag regulation,
Yes.
um, and what they expected you to have in place, not just for red flags, but across all of the regulated compliance things like adverse action, risk-based pricing, and some dealerships, I don't believe.
I don't think they know. You know what I mean, Ken? Like I don't think they know. In fact, actually, I think that's a really good point. Ken, for everybody out there watching and listening right now, maybe just kind of give us kind of like a 101 intro real quick, because I still think it's an educational issue. I mean, I think as dealers, if we know, we're we're prone to, okay, let me go build a process right then. But if I don't
Mhm.
really know what I know, so can you give us kind of like an entry level 101 on this?
Well, I think we've done a lot of compliance webinars that are available on our website.
Yes.
But uh, if if you don't have a compliance officer designated in your dealership, I think that's 101. That's the number one takeaway. Someone that can evaluate, um, first of all, become educated on what's expected of dealerships, what processes they need to have in place, especially now with the privacy uh, regulations that came out, because they're really that's a gateway to let a federal or state audit in, is to have consumers complain about how you're handling their information.
What specifically can dealers do to kind of protect them in that? Because I've heard of a couple instances exactly what you're talking about is dealers not handling privacy of the consumer's data correctly.
Well, it's again appointing that compliance officer and then educating him,
Mm.
right? What's expected of privacy? First of all, you need to do an inventory of every instance where you're intaking consumer information, writing it down. Simply simple as a check-in. Some if they still have paper check-ins,
Sure.
or even right if they're have an iPad in the front of the store with a check-in. All right, what application is that? Where does that information go? Right, so you just build out an audit of when that consumer information comes into the store
Hmm.
to when it transitions out of your dealer systems, right? And with that comes, right, a list of vendors that you have to
Of course.
verify how they're handling their data and the security and the programs they have in place. I think that's where the mid-sized to smaller dealerships are going, get into trouble, is that they're using vendors that maybe don't have the infrastructures that the larger vendors have, and the mid-sized to smaller vendors have good innovative products, but do they have the infrastructure that they need in order to be handling dealer information? So it's a real education. Where is that websites, right, with the new cookies law?
Oh yeah, good point.
Yeah, and that where are you intaking that consumer information? I know a lot of the mid to smaller size website providers, right?
Hmm.
How are they handling consumer applications? If you're using their applications, do they have the correct retention in place? How are they storing it? So you really have to start with every place you're entering, taking down consumer information, your service lane, right? Certainly CRMs, DMSs, right? But it's not just their website is cookies, things like that.
Oh, we're on the hook for this, and guys, I think process is everything, and I love this map. And guys, really today with today's technology, all right, getting the compliance manager and spending some time to doodle something on a piece of paper and maybe asking ChatGPT a few questions about helping you actually map this out. This isn't something that's going to take you weeks to do, but it is definitely an exercise they have to do because guys, we're on the hook for this. I don't think, and Ken, I love the fact you're bringing this up about the other technology partners because I don't think dealers realize they just assume, well, that's my website provider.
Yeah, yeah,
They got it covered. Well, they don't really, that's not the case, right? We're the ones, the dealers, we're the ones on the hook, correct?
correct. Yes, to ensuring that the even your vendors, right? That's part of what some of these third party compliance companies do, is help you audit your systems, help you audit your vendors, ensuring that your vendors are up to speed. And if you find that they're not, the regulation actually calls for you to take steps to either work with your vendor, get them up to speed, or replace that vendor.
Yes.
So yes, it's clearly the dealers are on the hook to make sure that this happens. So
Well, and look, guys, I know we started off this episode with the title of it of a dealership, one misstep that can cost your dealership thousands. Honestly, thousands probably wasn't the right number we should use for this title. I literally had just read a blog about a dealership. I want to say it was in Texas. I could be wrong. All right, where the dealership was broken into. Here's the funny thing: not a single car was stolen. In fact, it was actually all of the computers, all right, is what was stolen. And I don't think people realize is that the data that's on those computers actually can be worth way more than your inventory alone. And I'm sure, Ken, you've heard of other stories,
Yeah,
similar. You probably know
yeah,
them
and
better.
often they use those computers to find back doors into the vendors that are associated with those computers.
I never even thought about that.
Yeah, but also, right? I think I told you a similar story, maybe at NADA, right? We knew a dealership that got robbed, and they didn't steal anything except the paper deal jackets.
Paper deal jets. Yep. Yep.
Yeah, so yeah, they're after consumer information, and it's important that dealers, like I mentioned, right? Even the red flag regulation states that you
Yes.
have to designate a compliance manager, and you have to build an SOP and actually have that compliance manager sign it.
Hmm.
Uh, so, how many dealerships do you think have done that? I'm not sure. Uh,
I'm going to tell you, unfortunately, I don't think as many as there should be. Look, I know that, hey, guys, you're watching this podcast. You are probably a proactive dealer, and some of this stuff you may have already checked off your box, and some of you might be listening to yourself going, "Oh crap, yeah, I probably did need to do that," right? And actually, that's a perfect because, like, I know we're getting towards the end of our conversation, but that's a perfect question. I think we can end is like how can from your experience, your expertise, all right, how can dealers build a bulletproof compliance process without necessarily slowing down? Because I think that's where dealers go, right? I think when we think of like, oh, compliance, that's
mhm.
just gonna add time, and I'm just gonna add extra steps, and it's gonna slow things down. I want to get your professional opinion on this.
Well, it's I hate to keep going back to the education, but it's understanding what each regulation requires, and then how does that work in the workflow?
Mhm.
How do I address it? And right, adverse action letters we talked about earlier. Right, when do I need to deliver that adverse action letter? Who needs to deliver it? And then how am I going to audit and report on that I'm doing it? And I'm doing it in the instances where I should. And how am I protecting that consumer's information during that process? Adverse action letters are very important. That's the original FCRA. And identify the programs, then identify how you're handling them today,
Sure.
and then ensure that they're compliant. But you have to audit and report on it. So how are you going to audit? Right, you're going to have to audit deal jackets. You're going to have to,
Mm.
right? Are you putting these things in the deal jacket to prove that you did it? And so it's really defining the whole process, but starting at the top, identifying the processes and identifying if you're doing it today. If not, where should I be? And a lot of the compliance tools, most vendors that supply the products, like us, we supply credit. We provide you tools to do all those tools, and I know our competitors do as well, right? That we all have, and some of the providers are out one dealer track, right? They provide these compliance tools to ensure that you have the tools that are necessary to help you compliant. So,
Well, and look, I'm glad that you bring that up because, and I think for everyone out there watching, listening, yes, it's a process. You got to map the process. But I love the fact you bring up the audit because I think too often we get into this and say, okay, let me go fix the problem. I'm going to fix the problem, and here's a piece of paper. Here's a 12-step process. All right, done. No, but to your point, Ken, you're right, 100%. Like, if we're not auditing, all right, that process, then there's no way of actually ensuring it. And there are some great tools that will actually assist in the process, and some even assist in the actual auditing of of it as well. But you're right. There's a commitment. And here's the thing, guys. Look, I understand compliance ain't sexy. Okay. It's not, but it is it will make your business more effective. You will be more protected. And don't be surprised that you actually find out some impactful insights that's going to actually help you grow your business in other aspects of it. I'm sure, Ken, you've seen examples of that as well.
yeah, absolutely. And it's not right. There's ways to do it without adding friction of the deal. And I think that's what dealerships are worried about, adding friction, tying up my F&I guy so he can't focus on this. Right, or bogging him down with things that he needs to do for each deal. It's really not about that. There's ways to easily implement some of these processes to ensure that it's happening. And that I think that's part of the right. There's a not new, it's been around forever, but they're getting more and more sophisticated.
Mm-hmm.
Video chat, videoing the closing ceremony,
Yes.
tying AI into videoing the closing ceremony to ensure that all these things are being done. Right. That's one way to audit your personnel. The other is to audit it and identify personnel that might need more training. Having a formal training program. I mean, they're all things that dealerships should be looking at. But at least, you can evaluate and audit from the outside looking in, and not being the inside and getting in the middle of your deals. Right. You can do it from the outside looking in. But you have to have the tools to be on the outside looking in.
Absolutely. And it's really just a commitment, guys. Look, like I know we're at the tail end of our conversation, and okay, we tried to make compliance sexy, guys, but the bottom line is just it's something to commit to. We tried, Ken. I know we tried, but hey, it is what it is. But guys, one misstep can cost you thousands. All right. It is a commitment. It is a process. I honestly, for everybody out there watching this right now, I think one of the best first steps you can do is check out some of the information that is on 700 Credits website. There's been some great webinars and some stuff that you guys can watch and read through that's going to give you some even more in depth. But do commit to the process, commit to the technology. Because if you have any questions, call Ken, call the team. They deal with this crap all the time. Like they will definitely, be your compliant Sherpa and at least put you in the direction that you ultimately need to go to. Is that fair to say, Ken?
Yeah, absolutely. The first step is as I mentioned before, right? Appointing someone to do the due diligence and let you know where you're at.
100%. Hey, guys, for everybody out there watching, listening, we appreciate you. Look, one of the biggest compliments you can give us as content creators is share the show. If you have a manager or a colleague that needs to see some portion of today's conversation, share the show. It means a lot to us. Hey, Ken, real quick, for everybody out there watching and listening, again, where can they go to learn more and connect with you guys to continue some part of this conversation? Because we definitely did not finish the whole conversation.
Yeah. Well, www.700credit.com. You can also send an email to sales@700credits.com with your questions, and we'll get you routed to the right person. All our people are trained on the tools that your dealership needs to have in place. And if not, they know where to go.
That's right. And that's one thing I've always appreciated about you guys is that even if they don't have the answer, they'll help. That's what I love. Your team is just so willing to really assist and partner up with these. Hey, guys, thank you so much for taking the time to jam with us today. This has been a fun. Ken, thank you so much for your time. This has been great. Hey, guys, we will see you next episode. Thanks, guys.
Take care.
Thanks for tuning in to the 700 Credit Podcast. Tighten your process, protect your deals. See you in the next episode.